Tonight, your brain will replay a conversation you already survived, not because it matters, but because your mind refuses to let it rest. That moment when the lights go out is when the real dialogue begins. The words you should have said suddenly feel louder than reality. And if you think everyone does this, you're only half right, because psychology has a darker explanation hiding underneath this habit. In Psychology Facts, this behavior isn't random, and it isn't harmless. It's your brain rehearsing control in a world that once took it away. And the reason it shows up at night is not an accident. Here's where things get uncomfortable. When you replay conversations, you're not chasing the past. You're trying to fix the version of yourself that felt powerless. Every imagined comeback is your nervous system asking for safety. Every rewritten ending is your mind searching for closure. But here's the tension most people miss. The brain doesn't practice these scenes to win. It practices them to feel prepared. Psychology Facts show that people who replay conversations often grew up in environments where being misunderstood had consequences. Silence meant danger. Speaking wrong meant regret. So the mind adapted. It learned to simulate conversations before they could hurt you again. At night, when distractions disappear, that system finally turns on. This is why bedtime feels loud for some people. The room is quiet, but your mind isn't. You replay a message, then a tone, then a facial expression that may not have even existed. And suddenly you're emotionally reacting to a scenario that lives nowhere but your head. Here's the twist psychology rarely explains up front. This habit isn't about obsession, it's about anticipation. Your brain believes that if it can predict every conversation, it can prevent emotional pain. So it keeps you awake, sharpening imaginary dialogue like armor. The problem is what this costs you. Sleep becomes delayed, peace becomes conditional, and your self-worth quietly attaches itself to how well you perform in imagined arguments. Psychology Facts warn that over time this creates emotional fatigue. You feel exhausted by conversations that never happened, but something else is forming beneath the surface. A secret emotional dependency on mental rehearsal. The more you replay, the less spontaneous real life feels. And that's when the cycle tightens. You start living conversations twice, once in your head and once in reality. Except reality can never match the scripted version, so disappointment grows and the mind retreats further into rehearsal. If this feels personal, that's because it is. But we haven't reached the most unsettling part yet. There's a reason certain conversations replay more than others. And it reveals something powerful about your emotional history. That reveal changes how you see your thoughts forever. But first you need to understand what your mind is protecting you from, because not all replayed conversations are equal. Some are rooted in shame, others in fear, and a few are tied to moments that quietly shaped who you became. Your brain flags these moments as unfinished business, so it brings them back at night, when defenses are low. This isn't weakness, it's survival logic that outlived its usefulness. And once you recognize that, the pattern starts to make sense. But awareness alone doesn't stop the loop. In the next part, we uncover why certain people can't turn this off, and why forcing yourself to stop thinking actually makes it worse. There's a psychological trigger hiding in plain sight. Once you see it, your nights won't feel the same, but it might challenge how you see yourself. And that's where this gets uncomfortable, because the conversations you replay aren't about other people at all. They're about the parts of you that learn to stay alert. And what happens when that alertness never powers down? That answer explains why your mind waits for the dark. It also explains why silence feels heavier than noise, and why sleep feels like surrender. What happens next is the key to breaking the cycle, but most people never get told this part. Stay with me, because this changes everything. And it starts with one uncomfortable realization. That realization comes next, right after this. Don't blink now. Here's the truth. Most Psychology Facts videos avoid saying out loud. You don't replay conversations because you overthink. You replay them because your brain learned that being caught off guard once was too painful to repeat. So now it refuses to be unprepared ever again. This is where the habit turns from harmless to heavy. Psychology shows that the mind doesn't distinguish between real danger and emotional threat. Rejection, embarrassment, being dismissed. These register as danger signals. So your brain responds the same way it would to physical risk, by staying alert. That's why night is the worst time. When the world goes quiet, your guard should come down. But for people who replay conversations, the guard stays up, because silence feels unsafe. Silence feels like vulnerability, so your mind fills the quiet with dialogue. It keeps you company, it keeps you ready, it keeps you from feeling exposed. Here's the unsettling psychology fact. The conversations you replay aren't random memories. They're moments where you didn't feel seen. Moments where you swallowed words. Moments where you adapted instead of expressing. Your brain marks those moments as unresolved. And unresolved moments demand attention, especially at night, when emotional defenses weaken. This is why forcing yourself to stop thinking never works, because the replay isn't a thought problem, it's a safety behavior. Your mind believes these rehearsals protect you. But protection comes with a cost. Over time, this habit trains your brain to live ahead of reality. You don't experience conversations fully when they happen. Part of you is already planning the replay, already editing, already preparing for regret. Psychology Facts describe this as emotional preoccupation. You're physically present, but mentally future-proofing, and the more you do it, the harder it becomes to feel grounded. This is where anxiety quietly grows, not panic, not fear, but a constant background tension, a sense that something always needs to be fixed. And here's the twist most people don't expect. The brain doesn't replay conversations to improve them, it replays them to change how you felt about yourself in that moment. Every imagined comeback is an attempt to restore dignity. Every rewritten ending is an attempt to reclaim control. You're not arguing with others in your head. You're defending a version of yourself that once felt small. That realization changes everything, because it means the solution isn't better thinking, it's emotional permission. Psychology facts show that people who break this cycle don't silence their thoughts. They stop judging their emotional reactions. They allow themselves to acknowledge disappointment without rewriting it. They accept that not every moment needs closure to be valid. When the brain senses emotional acceptance, it stops rehearsing, because the threat dissolves. But here's the hardest part. Letting go feels like risk, because replaying feels productive. It feels like preparation. It feels like control. Yet control is exactly what keeps you trapped. The nighttime replay loop survives on one belief: if I think enough, I'll finally feel okay. But psychology facts are clear. Relief doesn't come from perfect responses. It comes from allowing imperfection without punishment. This is why some people fall asleep easily after emotionally honest days, and others stay awake after days spent suppressing themselves. Your mind doesn't want answers at night. It wants validation. So if you replay conversations before sleep, your brain isn't broken. It's tired of holding things in. It's asking to be heard, not rehearsed. Once you understand this, something shifts. The replay loses urgency, the scenes slow down, the volume lowers, and sleep doesn't feel like surrender anymore. It feels like rest. But this insight raises a final question. If your mind has been protecting you all along, what happens when you no longer need that protection? That answer decides whether this habit fades or turns into something deeper. And that's a conversation your brain has been waiting to have.